to Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for one of the best stages of the entire year, already calling it now, from La Val du Chaux to Observatorio Astrofisico to Javalambre, 184 Ks. It really doesn't look like the most brutal stage ever, but it has over 4,000 meters climbing. There's barely any flat all day. There's crosswinds on these false flat uphills, and the final climb is really steep. 11.1 Ks, 8%, but the last 7 Ks are about 11%, 10%, a lot of those kilometers. So it is very steep. I'm not going to give it the Rampas label. I don't think it's a Rampasian Humanis climb. I'd need to see a little bit more filthiness, but it's a hard stage, Benji, with big gaps in 2019. And yeah, well, I mean, what was the rumor before the stage, though? Because an FDJ director said something just off the cuff yesterday about Quickstep.
Yeah, and he said off the cuff, I think it was Benoit Vaugrenard, which was an ex-cyclist as well, now director in the car for that team. Now, he said that there was some sickness going on in the peloton when it comes to Quickstep, because we saw two riders finish on 15 minutes yesterday, Vervaeke and Bajoli. Klaas Lodewijk actually confirmed that there was some sickness. Bajoli DNF'd during the stage today, so whether that's because of something else, I would guess it's from the sickness.
Nah, it has to be.
It's the direct correlation that we see there. So that's something. Jonas Vingegaard also said something in the press that he had stomach problems. Now, he's not necessarily a liar in the media usually. He usually debunks injuries instead of saying that he has fake ones. So this was also most likely correct. But it was a pretty epic start to the stage already, but too bad we couldn't see much of it, because there was an hour fight for the breakaway. There were splits in the peloton throughout. It was a typical Tour de France stage start where you've got so many riders wanting to go in the breakaway because they know. Remco said he's in red. He said, I want to get the red jersey off my shoulders, and everybody heard, and I was like,
he pressed the green light. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you reckon it's a bad thing to say that before the stage starts?
I mean, I don't think it makes too much difference. I think teams can figure it out and what your intentions are. I mean, there's no real need to let people, like many times he said, oh, I want to give the jersey away, I want to give the jersey away. I'd say, well, probably just do it. There's no need to green light it so much. That being said, I guess it allows some directors, because a lot of directors, they need to do the plan the night before.
Yeah.
Teams are not so good at changing their plan in the first 10 minutes of a stage based on which other teams are jumping. They might not have a plan B and C and D. Hey, if this team's jumping, then you should jump. Some do, or most probably do, but this allows other teams to basically, every team's going to try and get the break.
Yeah.
Every team. And if there's a big break that goes in a stage race, Jumbo-Visma, they will want to be in it. They do not want to be left out of big breakaways. They want to use them strategically. And this is a nasty stage to control, evidenced by Angel Madrazo with Herrada and another Cofidis rider in 2019. It was so annoying to control. They let them get a huge gap, and Madrazo won the most improbable stage finish ever. So it's a nasty stage.
And after that stage, Madrazo was like, hopefully this stage will finally get my wife to give me a PlayStation. And then the PlayStation company in Spain ended up contacting La Vuelta, give a PlayStation to that man. What an epic finish for Angel Madrazo. But today was different. Today was very different when it comes to the breakaway. But before we get to that, during the breakaway formation phase, crashes. We saw Lenny Martinez crashing with Watson and Romain Grégoire. So half the team of FDJ got taken out for a second there. Kelderman's second crash in 2 days. Sepulveda on the ground as well. We saw his shorts being ripped in a later phase of the race as well when the broadcast started. So that's one crash that happened. And I think a separate crash was Jay Vine crashing and abandoning, which he was looking really good on Arinsol. It's a shame, but I gotta admit, there is a pattern of him crashing, just like it is the case with Kelderman.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not luck anymore.
Yeah, I know. I didn't see the crash, but it looked bad, and having to abandon, that's a big blow, not just for him. So hopefully he gets better quickly, but also to the team.
Yep.
Because Ayuso and Almeida, they needed Vine on today's finish. And I think he would have made a substantive difference. And for the rest of this race, that's a really big loss for them. Along with Soler probably there. And Vine is more in the pure climbing domestique role. Soler kind of gets to do Soler things, which is beautiful. But yeah, chaotic start. It reminded me a lot of how the Tour de France stages have gone the last 2 years, with UAE and Jumbo-Visma trying to beat the shit out of each other in break formation. Particularly this year in week 2, like stage 10 and 12 in this year's tour. I think this was the same.
the only difference between that and the Tour de France and this race is that we're going off basically the online sources now. La Vuelta Race Center, this online website where they've got someone actually updating what's happening in the race when the broadcast is not started. That was the place to be when it comes to information in the race. And let's just say it was very confusing because we saw some people attacking, but suddenly there were 2 groups ahead, a group of like 18 ahead with then a group of whatever, just a combination of 42 riders ahead in 2 groups. And who was reported in there? In the second group, there was Sepp Kuss with not just 1 teammate, not just 2 teammates, 3 teammates, which was Walter, Trotnik, and Van Baarle. But before we go through the entirety of this breakaway, then suddenly he was back reported in the peloton. So I was like,
so frustrating.
GC Kuss is there. And then they took it away from me. And then eventually he popped back up. So he was in the breakaway. Fortunately, GC Kuss action was happening and the breakaway was huge, right?
Well, images, the broadcast started at 2:30, but images didn't come on till 2:55.
Yeah.
And we thought there's this, okay, again, save the money yesterday, save the money the day before. I don't need to see anything before 30Ks to go. In fact, make it 20. But yeah, today it would have been great to have images. Didn't happen. It could have also been a boring stage. But yeah, it's when images did start, it showed this absolutely monstrous breakaway. And it was very curious, the composition of it, because Kuss is there as the best climber in the group. Soler, maybe the second best climber. Lenny Martinez is the best placed on GC because of his brilliant finish on Aransol and FDJ's team time trial. He's on 17 seconds behind Remco. I dare say Remco would have been quite happy for Lenny to just take red by 2-3 minutes. There's Buitrago, Landa, and Pouls there. Soler, as I said, the only UAE. Kroon, Monake supporting Van Eetveld. Hugh Carthy on 154. Oya Lascano, curiously, stayed in there whilst Rubio was also in the breakaway. That would have been fine, that combination, the ultimate tug buddy, Lascano and Rubio to win the stage, but Kuss is in there as well. Jesus Herrada, we expected. Bardet, I thought it was Poole, but it was Bardet, trying to make amends for yesterday. Vokola, Kras is on 113 on GC. Dela Cruz is on 122, and your pick, Jefferson Cepeda, who was good again on 117. But the big thing, as you said, was 4 Jumbos. Kuss on 55 with 3, you couldn't pick better tug buddies. Walter, I got the t-shirt on, by the way, at shop.lanternrouge.com. But yeah, Dylan Van Baarle, Tratnik, and Walter is like, for this terrain, a nasty combination to keep the lightweight climber out of the wind all day.
Exactly. It's an absolute masterclass to have these riders in there. And then you look at the other teams in that group and you see Quicksteps in there. Kataniwan Vervaeke, you mentioned it. It's like, on one end, it can be useful to have some riders up there, but on the other end, it's also like you need to be able to pull them back at the moment where it's most useful. So it would depend on later in on the race. Okay, how is the gap looking? Is there a space where Cataneo is very valuable to pull back to the peloton and so forth in that sense? So it depended on where they would use them, whether this was a right idea or not to have them in that group. But then Marc Soler, for example, that's an interesting one because he's worse than Kuss for me, GC-wise as well. I reckon I said during the stage there's about a 20% chance that Soler beats Kuss here. So 80% chance that Kuss beats Soler at the end of this stage. And knowing that, I also see UAE as not in an ideal situation either, but not in a situation where they necessarily need to chase behind. I'd put the pressure on the other teams if I was UAE at that point. Then Ineos missed out completely except for Castro, but Castro completely irrelevant in that breakaway.
Yeah, I didn't understand it.
Useless addition to that breakaway. He's not a useless rider, but in that place...
Brilliant rider, but he ain't beating Kuss on an 11K 8% finish.
Yeah. If Arensman was there, then you're in an ideal situation with a GC rider gaining time that way, because Thomas is the one that people will mark, even though Arensman is the better rider in this GC so far at the moment. I haven't actually checked how Ineos did today, so I'll do that while you're talking in a bit. But then, you said it, Martinez is there with 2 teammates. That's interesting as well. They're going to be pacing in this group. But what other teams missed out? Movistar, Lascano and Rubio here. Are they happy with the situation?
Not really, because as I said, like, ideally they would be in there in a smaller, less threatening GC breakaway, and Mas felt good today as well. And you can't just let Kuss take 6 minutes. Like, Kuss is, okay, yeah, the GC Kuss, sometimes it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. Yes, his TT's not good. If Kuss doesn't have to be a domestique and he's in Spain, you're not just going to take 6 minutes on him on one stage or in a TT And so that puts you in and for the podium, if you're Mars and that's what you're targeting, you can't just give him 6 minutes. Nor Landa as well on 150, or even Lenny or Soler, frankly. Like, Soler is really, really good, especially on these sort of stages. But yeah, so Movistar and Ineos bailed out Quickstep, essentially, which I don't really have a problem with, because what is the role of Arcas, Erviti, and Oliveira, if not to pull on that? They're not going to help on the final climb. They're not going to go for breakaway or win a stage like a Ganna the other day. It really cost Movistar nothing. And
most importantly, the gap is 7 minutes.
Yeah.
If it was 3 minutes, I probably wouldn't help. I'd be like, fuck you, Quickstep, get to work. But when it comes to 7 minutes, you're coming at the point where it's directly hindering you massively as well. And the gap was 7 minutes at some point. So 7 minutes is a huge gap.
How did it get to that? That's what I really
don't know.
How did it get to 7, you know?
They can't have gotten, like, it jumped from 2 to 4 in the span of no time as I was looking at the tracker. So there must have been no one pacing at a certain point.
Like, Quickstep just completely let this get out of control, obviously. And people looked to Quickstep and they just didn't control it, or they were cooked from the breakaway formation. But
maybe they tried to do some mind games with, like, we've got Cataneo and Vervaeke up the road, but that's never going to work, of course. So I'm really curious how that dynamic was at that point in the race, whether we're going to hear some experiences from riders that might have said, okay, there was no tempo in the group at that point because that gap exploded from 2 minutes to 7 minutes in no time. So 7 minutes, that's a huge gap. And just to repeat ourselves, Stef Kros is also in that front group. Two teammates there of Total pacing. You've got the likes of Mollard and Storer pacing for Lenny Martinez. You've got 3 riders, technically only Van Baarle for the majority of the race, pacing for Jumbo-Visma.
But that's the thing. It's Lenny wants red.
Yeah.
Kras wants to improve his GC position. They're seeing top 10 starting to blink in headlights here.
Yeah.
Because normally when something like this happens, everyone looks at Jumbo. Jumbo have looked great. No one helps them. And they actually get cooked by the multiple teams chasing behind. But FDJ, Total, and even Astana later, them helping because they had mutual interest with Jumbo made a really, really big difference. But the gap did start to come down, Benji, on the rolling terrain. It was at 6. Casper Pedersen and Seri were pulling. They held it stable. They were kind of pulling against Van Baarle. It eventually came down to 6. And then from 55 to 30 to the intermediate sprint, Hajduk and another quick stepper and Erviti and Oliveira.
Knox as well, a bit later.
Later, but before the intermediate sprint, before the downhill run, they melted this gap. And all of a sudden, Jumbo's position started to look a bit wasted. Did you, and again, it makes sense. Ineos pulling, I think it makes sense. Like, you got nothing to lose by pulling. You don't just want to give Jumbo a free ride, to be honest. And even if it helps Remco, UAE kind of biding their time. But when we got to that intermediate sprint, Benji, Tratnik has started to pull really hard. Ganna's now pulling for Ineos.
Was that late, Tratnik pacing?
No, he started pulling before the intermediate sprint. Oh, was it too late?
Yeah, because I feel like Van Baarle paced for a really long time.
Yeah, I think Tratnik and Volta, maybe the Koos gap would have been bigger if they both pulled a little bit earlier on that uphill. But also, Ganna's pulling behind, but you're right. Maybe they're trying to bait FDJ. FDJ had kind of stopped helping for a little bit. They're holding Storer back. Mollard was a little bit cooked. But we get to that intermediate sprint. Lazcano and Krohn try to anticipate. And this is where the Lazcano in the break made no sense to me because he didn't really tug buddy it for Rubio. He didn't really commit to an attack. He didn't drop back for the group behind.
And it would have been useful if there was no other GC threats in the group. Then the tug buddy would have worked.
Brilliant, yeah.
But he couldn't play his role because he can't pace other GC riders away from us.
Exactly.
So it's kind of, they got chess outplayed and probably should have reacted by pulling Lazcano back and starting to pace behind with Lazcano as well.
And this was the curious thing. This is where Quickstep, it started to look good and it looked all under control. And I thought the pendulum was swinging. Okay, Koos is probably going to win the stage or take time.
Yeah.
But he's going to take maybe 60, 90 seconds. Not a disaster. Remco's going to smoke him in the TT. But then at this point, at the end, through Torrijas, Quickstep no longer get any help from Ineos. Ineos say, you have 2 riders ahead in Quickstep. You have Cataneo and Vervaeke ahead. We've been pulling with Ganna. The gap is now 3 minutes. It's no longer out of control, 7 minutes. Movistar also stopped pulling. Quick-Step, despite the final climb, the last 6Ks being like 10%, do not drop back. Vivaka or Cataneo, I think and they have James Knox, I believe, pull the false flat downhill for 10 plus kilometers into the base of this climb, and the gap goes from 3 minutes back to 350 because Van Baarle, Tratnik, Mollard, and Javier Romo absolutely rip it. And I think Quick-Step had to drop one back if they were worried about Koos.
Cataneo is the one that I would have called back, because I reckon Vervaak is like, Cataneo is really good at the flat riding, the rolly terrain riding next to the 4, 5 to 7% max, maybe climbing. Once it gets over 8, 9, 10, then I'm like, okay, I'm not putting Cataneo on my bingo card for today necessarily. So I reckon I agree with you, especially for the first portion of the climb. It would have been very useful to run into the climb as well. He would have been able to hold it out quite well as well. And then you have Knox that probably wouldn't have had to do the roll earlier, which was also in that rolly terrain, while Knox might have been better off on the climby terrain that came afterwards. But I don't mind necessarily keeping Vervaak up there.
That's fine.
As like either a defensive satellite rider or an offensive satellite rider, depending on how Remco is feeling. Because at that point, you have no clue how he's feeling.
But it just made no sense where they have a rouleur they keep in the breakaway, and they have their two lightweight climbers, Jan Hirt and James Knox, pull on a false flat downhill, and then the 3 and 4% sections at the base of Javalambre made no. They should have, if they were worried about Koos, that made no sense to me. Anyway, the breakaway. Tratnik leads in the breakaway into the base of Javalambre. What was looking like, maybe if the GC group completely launches it, they might have a chance, because that 50-second swing, breakaway is 100% winning. It even lets Koos have a little bit of wiggle room to play and go for the stage. His main concern is Lenny Martinez, but particularly Marc Soler. He does not want to let Soler get ahead of him on GC, because UAE are maybe the second strongest team in this race. And Javier Romo did a brilliant job. David de la Cruz was looking good up there. Who was... Stora. I shouldn't erase. Stora also, he starts ripping it for Lenny Martinez, Rojo, red jersey ambitions and top 10 ambitions, whilst now Vivaka has dropped back Benji and Cataneo. But we don't see Cataneo for a while, but it's Vivaka who goes back after Hirt's been pulling, and Vivaka does a really good job, but Stora was fucking strong today.
Yeah, Stora was very strong today, and Mollard had been strong as well already during the run into this climb as well. So I feel like it's such a difference with the Tour de France, this Groupama team. Like at the Vuelta, it's so much more fun to root for this team. These youngsters, Lenny Martinez, who said top a few weeks ago, like a week ago.
He's in red, is he not?
He's in red.
Oh,
spoilers. But doesn't matter.
He is the top dog.
He is the top dog. He is in top right now, so that's an excellent thing. But he wasn't the only one that was doing really well in the group. And the interesting character for me was Walter in that group, because in that breakaway group, Walter had never really come to the front and done the pacing. So we started talking during our live watch along of the race. Have they not used Walter? Have they skipped Walter? And then we started thinking maybe they're going to use them as a defensive or offensive satellite rider for the behind, for the GC riders that are behind. And we saw no real action for a tiny bit in terms of like no real attacks, because we saw pacing in both groups for the first 2 kilometers of the climb, which was intriguing. And we saw Cataneo pop up behind Hirden in the GC group. So like you said, you had the order of Vervaak, Hirt, and Cataneo. I'm not sure Cataneo actually pulled much.
No, I don't think Cataneo made a difference in the end. But yeah, Vivaka was strong, and he moved that gap down to 3:25, which is, he's doing a good job, but Stora incredibly good. And as you said, I was like, what's Walter going to do? Because Koos is going to get attacked. The second Stora pulls off, there's going to be attacks. And that's exactly what happens. Ina Rubio, with 4Ks to go, attacks. Koos plays it cool initially. De La Cruz chases. Bardet and Lenny Martinez actually attack across. And Koos is in this second group, and you're thinking, has Koos been suffering? Is he not on a good day? But he's just looking at Soler. Looking, and then bang. I just said, maybe Koos doesn't look good on the live stream. And he attacks across, doing it really, really easy, getting across to Bardet and Martinez. Lenny Martinez was actually suffering quite a bit on the wheel of Bardet, even getting gapped a little bit. Bardet super strong today, actually. Very impressive. And it's a shame he lost so much time yesterday. But
French on French action.
Well, they all drop. We actually don't see what happens. Well, let's do breakaway first.
Yeah.
We don't really see what happens. I don't remember seeing Kuss join Bardet and Martinez. I don't remember seeing Bardet and Martinez join Rubio.
No, we didn't see that. We just saw the attack of Rubio. We saw the response by Lenny Martinez and by Bardet behind. And then we saw Kuss attacking like a rocket past everybody because he wanted immediate separation on the likes of Soler and so forth. And when we saw that move, we said he's going to fly past everybody to each other. So it was hinted at in our, like, it's kind of the TV show where they don't explain it, but they just hint at what's going to happen and you got to fill it in. That's what the TV directors are doing here.
Yeah, exactly. It's no surprise when they cut back and all of a sudden you see Kuss on his own with Cabeza de Carrera on the screen. You're like, okay, well, that makes sense. He's attacked those guys and with 3Ks to go and Kuss is going clear to win the stage.
But it's actually important what happens behind. Did Kuss do that because he heard you on the watch along say, should let Kuss wait?
Well, maybe. No, I think he's earned his freedom this year. He helped a Giro win and a Tour win. I think he's earned a little bit of freedom not to get called back from a sure stage win. He basically goes clear. The only question is, can Lenny Martinez hold the gap stable enough to keep the red jersey? Kuss is on 55. Lenny is on 17. Kuss is surely taking the 10 bonies. And so bonies could also play a role at the finish too. And Lenny, the gap was not going in a good way. It's at 32 seconds, I think, with 1K to go. And he looked like he was struggling. But luckily for Kuss basically goes clear, wins the stage, his second Vuelta stage win after I think he won in 2019. And what's marked already an incredible season for him, gets freedom in the breakaway and also takes a lot of time on GC. And yeah, a sort of the first part of the masterclass from Jumbo-Visma today. And then Lenny Martinez finishes the last K super strong, beats Bardet in the sprint. I think Bardet was relaying for him, and the white jersey turns that into red, keeping his virtual maillot jaune, maybe later.
Maillot Rojo.
He'll get a yellow jersey maybe in a few years. They'll put the pressure on him too. Keeps it by 8 seconds ahead of Kuss, which was kind of nice actually. Like Kuss wins the stage. It's great to see a young rider like Martinez get in the red jersey. That was super exciting. But yeah, I mean, but as you said, Benji, action behind.
And it didn't come from Remco. We didn't see Remco launching from the wheel of Cattaneo and so forth, but you kind of pointed at it during the stage. You were shouting at me. Well, you weren't shouting at me. You were talking to me saying that, why are they playing so defensively, Quickstep? The only thing they're doing now is playing defensively. If you put Cattaneo behind here, then doing that means that Remco will probably do a late attack. That's your thought process at that moment. Then maybe that was a hint that what was about to happen.
Yeah.
Because then Jumbo-Visma made a move, not just at the front of the race, but Primož Roglič attacked. We didn't see the attack, but immediate separation, right?
Immediate separation, and immediately we see, oh, by the way, in that GC group, I think no one really dropped too early, and that was the tell as well, that Quickstep weren't pacing that hard because no one serious dropped.
Yeah.
Thomas Aronsman,
20 riders.
Thomas Aronsman, Vlasov was still there. Okay, maybe they've dropped, Caruso or someone, but they're not dropping the top 10 guys or even putting them under too much pressure. Almeida's yo-yoing, but that's just what he does. He can't fool me at this point. And yeah, Roglič goes, and Remco's immediately sliding. He's sliding.
Yeah.
Ayuso's the one to respond. And I was thinking, this could be a bit of this. I thought initially this could work out okay for Remco, that UAE and Jumbo sort of attack each other and close each other like happened on Aronsal.
But I reckon Ayuso was kind of semi-chained, as in when he saw Roglič up the road, he started pacing for a bit, but Jonas Vingegaard was in his wheel. He looked back, not only because of Vingegaard, but Almeida was behind Remco at that moment, number 12 of UAE.
I don't think so. You think Ayuso would stop chasing if he felt good because Almeida's behind?
He kept on looking behind. Not just to Vingegaard. So I don't know. It's maybe a stupid theory, but regardless of the theory, he wasn't pacing fully behind Roglič either.
For sure. And that's the thing. Roglič was out there. Mars, who'd had a mechanical on the climb, came back. He looked like he got $1 million. Jan Uterbrooks also looked very, very, very good. He was stronger than Vlasov again today.
And the fact is, I'm not saying that Ayuso kept himself back or anything,
I think I place it more on he's looking at Jonas Vingegaard on his wheel, thinking, fuck, I'm not going to chase with this guy on my wheel.
Well,
Roglič
kind of have to.
Well, exactly. And so he and Musk kind of pull a little bit, but you're right. And then he's also got Almeida behind, so maybe he's thinking, am I really going to pull with Mas in my wheel, Vingegaard in my wheel, get across to Roglic, keep Almeida behind, and get counter-attacked? I'll look stupid. I'll have kept my teammate behind. And so, yeah, you're right. Maybe it all plays into it together. And I also think the UAE guys can't lift. They don't respond to it. Ayuso's been...
like weightlifting.
This is how Ayuso rides. This is how he always rides.
Yeah.
He rode like this in the Vuelta last year on Pico Hano. He cannot respond to accelerations like Almeida, and then they finish the climb extremely strong. And yeah, that's just the pattern for UAE riders, apart from Pogačar. So even Yates is like that, actually. So I thought tactically pretty good for Roglic, because normally you don't want to just dangle.
Yeah.
But if suddenly they start to look at each other, then you get 3 seconds essentially.
And it's also not 10 kilometers to go. It's about 3.5 kilometers to go at this point. And we can't erase the other riders in this race either. Ineos, Shadow Realm at that point.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Bora, very interesting. Kian Uitenbroeks was in the wheel of Juan Ayuso. A massive stage by that Belgian.
Yeah.
Better than Remco Evenepoel. Is Kian Uitenbroeks the real new Eddy Merckx? I'm not going to open the box of Stef Kras.
Stef Kras, yeah.
Stef Kras is the new Eddy Merckx.
Look at the stage results.
But the fact that he's there really strong, he also didn't have to wait on Vlasov, which I love that shit.
That's correct, yeah.
Kemna from the breakaway helps Vlasov behind Kian Uitenbroeks, who's still ahead of the likes of Remco and so forth. So that's an interesting dynamic as well, that it's basically riders all over the road.
Guess who didn't wait?
Guess who didn't wait?
Despite being 2 minutes behind Koos.
Soler?
Buchmann.
Oh, Buchmann. Well, true.
He finishes 19 seconds ahead of Roglic, 2:33 behind Koos.
And he dropped really early as well.
Man.
Can't believe it.
I don't know if the car told him he was already on 11 minutes on GC. I don't know if the car told him to wait or not, but man, that's really bad. He should have been helping Kian or Vlasov. Yeah. But anyway, we again don't see the attack. Suddenly Vingegaard counterattacks across to Roglic. Mas is following his wheel. Ayuso is dropped, and then the next thing we see is those two relaying, and it's looking like a Jumbo-Visma masterclass. Remco though, Benji, when he dropped, I thought Remco is going to be losing a minute plus, but in the end, this reminded me a lot of Sierra de la Pandera. Steep section, 3-4 Ks to go, sudden acceleration from Roglic. Remco can't respond, and then he starts to save it pretty well. And I think Remco did the final kilometer quicker than Roglic and Vingegaard. Maybe at least the same time, 5 seconds quicker. So it's not like the Pogačar complete collapse. It's just he can't respond to that initial acceleration, and Cataneo is pacing him.
Because he does have the punch sometimes, but it's like on the longer climb, he doesn't have the punch.
Yeah, it's just very, very similar to Sierra de la Pandera, actually, and even to Sierra Nevada last year, stages 13 and 15 for the Vuelta.
Now, Roglic crashed a few days ago, but Remco crashed pretty hard as well a few days ago. How much do we think this influences them? Because I don't know how much it influences Roglic. He was looking pretty good on the road today. It's impossible to say how much it influenced Remco, but it's going to be used as an excuse. Obviously, I'd use the same if I was him. So,
yeah, I think it's hard to know. It's really, really hard to know. I think on Pandera it definitely did affect it. But anyway, Jumbo-Visma go clear. Roglic and Vingegaard exchange turns. They get the gap to about 35 seconds to Remco, but it holds stable. And then suddenly we see Mas drop in the last K, completely crack.
Explode.
I know. And that also happened in the Vuelta last year. And then Ayuso, he chases, and it's just like Pico Hano. He finishes really, really strong, Ayuso. Almost, I thought at one point he was going to come back to the two Jumbo-Visma riders, but he doesn't. And so Roglic and Vingegaard finish across the lines, arm in arm. So Sepp Kuss wins the stage, 26 seconds ahead of Martinez, who goes into the red jersey. Bardet on 31 seconds, Landa and Soler on 46, Wout Poels and Rubio on 103, then Christian Rodriguez, Stef Kras, Cepeda. But in terms of the GC guys, Vingegaard and Roglic, the first of them, but no bonies, 7 seconds ahead of Ayuso, who saved it well. Almeida doing Almeida things, comes back. He finishes 14 seconds behind Roglic and Vingegaard with Kian Uitenbroeks. Fantastic performance. Mas loses 24 seconds, I think, to the Jumbo-Visma duo in a kilometer.
So much changes at the end of this stage. Almeida, who dropped earlier than Remco did, he's suddenly actually ahead of Remco, ahead of Mas, And he's showing up behind Kian Uiterbrooks and Ayuso, who are bridging towards the two Jumbo riders, Jonas Vingegaard and Roglic. And I kind of feel like Jonas and Primoz went pretty hard really early on the climb, but towards the end of the climb, they lost time to the other riders, no?
I think so. Definitely to Ayuso. They must have lost time because he came back from 20 seconds probably. And Remco even came back a little bit too. So yeah, Mars ends up losing 24. Remco's next. He loses 24. He loses 32 seconds to the Jumbo-Visma duo. Vlasov loses 42 seconds, if I can count. 42 seconds. Geraint Thomas loses 1 minute and 25 seconds. And Arensman loses nearly over 2 minutes. Can I count? Yeah, Arensman loses over 2 minutes on those guys. So not a good day for Ineos. We forgot to say Valter also dropped back from the breakaway and he was waiting. He also pulled for the Jumbo-Visma duo when they were there. Vingegaard looked like he was really suffering actually on the wheel of Valter because he just closed across to Roglic. I couldn't really tell who was the stronger today, but yeah, good day for Jumbo-Visma, bad day for Ineos, and I also think Quickstep got outplayed today as well.
Yeah, tactically outplayed completely, also in the initial part of the phase, but also towards the end of the stage, they probably could have done things differently when it comes to pulling riders back at a certain point. But Jumbo-Visma's strategies were very much on point. It's slightly easier if you've got a strong team, but still, regardless of that, very strong. And I reckon from the images that Roglic looked better than Vingegaard today.
I think so. He looked, he finished. He finished in front. He also was the first attacker.
Rock's face is not really how you see it. It's like, isn't it the elbows kind of, or like?
Yeah, I think he looked marginally stronger than Vingegaard, but it is a good climb for him. But yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, obviously Vingegaard also had to snap close him, and he was the first mover, but he was dangling a lot longer than Vingegaard too, Roglic. So impressive performance from him, particularly after Arensal, where he was maybe a little bit disappointing. The revised GC, though, Lenny Martinez into red, 8 seconds ahead of Kuss, Soler on 51, Pools on 141, Steph Kras 148, and Evenepoel is actually still ahead, even though he's now 2 minutes and 39 behind Kuss. That's a pretty big gap, but he's still 3 seconds ahead of Mas, 5 seconds ahead of Vingegaard, and 11 seconds ahead of Roglic. Ayuso is 8 seconds and 14 seconds, or 16 seconds rather, behind Vingegaard and Roglic, and still a bit behind Evenepoel. So Evenepoel saved it. At one point, I thought he was going to lose another 30 seconds and be behind Almeida today. But he saved it reasonably well. But Ineos, and yeah, Vlasov lost a bit of time. You know, I wasn't surprised by that. Where's Uiterbrooks? He's right up there too. But I mean, Jumbo-Visma must be happy with this, Benji. It really can't have gone better.
Of course. Will they have thoughts about the last kilometer? Ooh, they came a bit close. Will they think about the competition now and see, okay, got to watch Ayuso closely now. We got to consider Kian Uiterbrooks for a podium position at some point, even though time trial-wise, I'm actually not sure how good Kian Uiterbrooks is. I'm kind of fearful.
He should lose to Roglic and Vingegaard in the TT.
Should lose time, eh?
Yeah.
100%, like 30 seconds a minute even.
Yeah, well, depends. It's a flat TT where Jumbo haven't been so good this year, so it is different to a hilly TT. I think Ayuso could beat the Jumbo duo in the TT, actually. Remco certainly still should.
Remco should.
Remco looked a bit ginger when he was putting his jacket on, looked a bit sore, so maybe he was suffering from the crash.
What is that expression?
Oh, gingerly, something like wincing, you know, or like looking stiff, like gingerly doing something.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Jumbo-Visma was super aggressive, and it paid off today. They put their best climbing domestique in front rather than keeping him behind, and I guess they didn't really need him in the end for Roglic and Vingegaard. What should Quickstep have done differently? Was there any way they could avoid Remco getting dropped today?
Well, avoid getting dropped? I don't think so. But they could have made it easier in the initial part of the stage, maybe by marking the likes of Kuss trying to go in a breakaway, by just pacing every group down that had it. But like, once the gap is made, eh?
Yeah.
So it's difficult then, but
you can't give Kuss 6 minutes.
It's impossible for us to judge the breakaway formation phase without seeing it. Because at the Tour, it was easy. Like, UAE just wasn't good at controlling breakaway formations. But we can't say that about Quickstep yet because I didn't see the footage. But I'm guessing they made a mistake somewhere, considering a 42-man group got away.
They must have. And they had two of their riders in that group as well who didn't react quickly to see Kuss in it and drop back. And I think if you're on a bad day, that's going to be exacerbated by that day being much harder than it would have been otherwise. So if it was an easier day, Remco probably loses less time. That would make sense to me. Like the Aronsol day wasn't so hard. So I think, yeah, a few mistakes. And this reminds me a lot of the Marie Blanc stage, actually, where Hindley was the bait.
Yeah.
UAE chased all day and then got whacked at the finish.
Exactly. Very similar, although the difference now is that multiple teams were the pacers, and the ones that did pace are the ones that lose the most time. UAE did not pace. Almeida also came back and dropped Mas and Remco and so forth. Ayuso dropped them all. So if we take a look at Movistar pacing, Mas exploded. So might it have been better if he did his own tempo? Maybe. But it's not really in Mas's genes. When he feels diamonds in the legs, he has to show it. Eh?
And Rubio didn't wait either. Rubio was on 105 and he'd been dropped by Koos. So, yeah. I think for Ayuso is a serious threat. Like, I think these climbs don't even suit Ayuso that well. I actually think the other stages in week 2 suit him even better based on Tour de Suisse, where at high altitude, he just absolutely nuked everybody. And so I think UAE are very, very scary for Jumbo-Visma.
Yeah.
That being said, they still got dropped and Roglic and Vingegaard gained time. Like, you get credit for finishing strong in the last K, but you still got dropped and lost time.
Like, based on the situation with 80 kilometers to go, it could have gone worse for Quickstep. But that being said, it is not a good situation when your GC rider loses 30 seconds. It could have gotten worse on the climb either. He could have lost a minute 30 the way he was looking. Because I was like, when he dropped, I was like, okay, he's going to lose more than a minute here. But then he actually kept up the tempo. So I reckon they're going to be happy that they didn't lose the Vuelta today. But they're going to be like, fuck, that was not a good day for our GC potential victory.
Oh, Quickstep got kicked in the teeth today. Yeah. In the whole stage.
Yeah. Exactly. So even tactically, but then you look at Ineos, like, just give everybody a fucking chance to go in breakaways, go for stages, put a fucking train up for Ganna for the stage wins, because he can literally win one, if not more, sprint stage. I was gonna say use Thomas as a lead out, but probably not. That's a bit too far.
Why not?
I don't know. He's only 2.5 minutes now behind.
Okay, he'll have a good TT, but it's only 25 kilometers long. Like. And listen, the Vuelta, I knew before the race, it's not a good parcours for him.
Yeah.
Like, these steep watt per kilo test finishes are not that good for him in warm conditions. Yeah. He's good in an attritional, high altitude, cold and rainy day, like in the Giro, where he was brilliant. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets dropped again on stage 8, him and Aronsman. So yeah, it's not looking good for Ineos. And I think, obviously, they need to just go for stages as much as possible because, frankly, podium is looking completely unrealistic right now. Like, where is the podium coming from?
Yeah.
They're getting dropped by Brooks. They're getting dropped by Ayuso, Almeida, Vlasov, not to mention the 2 Jumbo guys and Mas and Remco. So, yeah, they need to obviously just go into FDJ sort of mode and go for stages and hope for the best. Like Bernal should have been in the breakaway today. But that's, big day in the Vuelta. Super exciting. Hope you enjoyed the watch along if you watched that as well.
Yes.
Tomorrow's stage is another sprint stage from UTL to Olivia, 203 kilometers. A lot of that from Valencia down to Olivia is on the coast. So this could be a crosswind stage. There was even some crosswinds today on the uphill plateaus. And I really think this, I don't know the wind direction, but this could be a crosswind day. The last 90 Ks is flat on the coast. From Valencia, who have you got, Benji? It should be a sprint regardless, and I don't see Milano missing the sprint, or Alpecin are not missing crosswinds. I don't see why Alpecin wouldn't control either. I have to go with Pippo Ganna to win this stage.
Ah, fuck. I was going to do the same. So this is the Valencia region, right?
Yep.
I'm taking a look at the map, so keep on talking for a second if possible. How do you see Ganna winning today?
I think Ganna will just win the sprint. Pretty much. Like, he nearly beat Groves the other day.
Will he have support this time around?
I think they should give him a little bit more support. I don't think it's worth, like, Castro or Freyler or Hajduk. Hajduk should be used as a lead up tomorrow for Ganna.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
Hajduk, with where Thomas and Aronsman are on GC, should not be used to position them. So, yeah, I think there's a corner with, I think, if I scroll, very late corner with, like, 300 meters to go. So I think Ganna can win kicking out of that corner. But yeah, they got to use Heidek as a lead out man, and that's I think he should win the sprint, go out of that corner long.
I was going to give you a massive bunch of information when it comes to the wind on tomorrow's stage, but I just realized that I don't know what knots are, so I can't tell you anything.
What?
16 knots, is that a lot?
16 knots in meters per second. That's not that much. 8.
Okay.
Normally has to be 20, right, Luke? Is that 30 kilometers per hour wind?
There's something there, but it's
what
between,
direction is it?
From right under to left top.
So cross headwind. Cross headwind, not the best.
Cross tailwind is ideal for
cross tailwind's ideal, yeah.
What's the theory behind that, by the way? Why is cross tailwind better?
You go faster in the cross tailwind section, and then when you're at the back of the group, you're doing. I actually don't know. All I know, it's one of those things where I know the answer, but I don't really know the physics behind it.
If I recall, there was this thing where you get.
Because there's less drafting benefit when there's a tailwind.
Exactly.
With cross headwind, you just get more drafting benefit when you're behind, so you do less watts.
Exactly. I can draw it, but I can't explain it.
We're not physicists here. Anyway, cross, I go with Ganna. You can pick Ganna too.
Yeah, I will pick Ganna. But my Ganna will beat your Ganna because we saw 2 Kusses on the road today. There was a moment where it was a Kuss in the peloton and the breakaway before the broadcast started. So today, my Ganna will beat yours tomorrow.
Certainly possible. But yeah, I think it'll be a sprint, and I think it'll be very nervous too with the threat of winds. Even if it isn't high enough, even the threat of wind is enough to make the directors nervous and put everyone to the front. But that's all from us today. Huge stage in the GC. Jumbo-Visma, certainly coming back after the disappointment on Arinsal and making a big statement. But UAE, despite losing Vine, they're a serious threat as well. So this Vuelta is heating up. Don't count Remco out either. He struggled on Pandera last year, and on Pional, he won the stage the next week. So he can have bad days and come back. It's not over. It's just getting started. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll see you with a recap of Stage 7 tomorrow.